Welcome to Vivid Verses. If our words resonate with you, please subscribe, tap the like, and share your thoughts and your feelings in the comments. Now let's begin. The numbers didn't add up. That was the first red flag, long before the behavior started. I work in high-level consultancy. My entire career is built on a simple premise. Identify inefficiencies, strip away emotional attachment to legacy, assets, and restructure for maximum yield. I look at a company, and I don't see people or history. I see cash flow, asset utilization, and burn rate. If a department has been bleeding capital for 5 years, I don't care if the manager is a nice guy. I cut it. It's a cold profession, perhaps, but it's honest. Numbers do not lie. People lie. People tell themselves stories to justify bad investments. I had been telling myself a story about Chloe for 6 months, and the audit was overdue. We had been living together for a year in a pre-war 2-bedroom in the city. It was expensive but strategic, close to the firm, decent resale potential, good security. The initial agreement was clear. I paid the rent. Chloe paid for consumables, groceries, household items, the internet bill. It was an 80-20 split, adjusted for our income disparity. I thought it was equitable. I thought we were operating as a partnership. The first anomaly in the data appeared during a discussion about the winter holidays. Chloe wanted to go to Aspen. She didn't ski. She wanted to go because her social feed was saturated with influencers wearing white fur boots, holding hot chocolate in front of chalets. I ran the numbers. Peak season flights, accommodation at the level she deemed acceptable, dining, equipment rentals I wouldn't use because I'd be managing her boredom. The projection was $12,000 for 5 days. I suggested Vermont. Same snow, a third of the price, less travel time. I could book a cabin, we could cook our own meals, and actually disconnect. Chloe was sitting at the kitchen island. She put down her phone. The look on her face wasn't disappointment. It was disgust. She told me that Vermont wasn't the point. The point was the experience. She said I made everything sterile, acting like money was something to be hoarded instead of enjoyed. Then she dropped the line that signaled the shift in operations. Real men don't count pennies. In negotiation theory, this is a leverage play. When one party lacks a logical argument, she couldn't prove Aspen provided a tangible benefit superior to Vermont that justified the 300% markup. They attacked the character of the opposition. She was attempting to link my financial prudence to a deficit in masculinity. I didn't react. I simply stated that we weren't going to Aspen. That night, the second data point emerged. I initiated contact in bed. Standard intimacy. She turned away. She claimed a headache. She said she was stressed and felt like we never did anything exciting. The correlation was established immediately. Spending equals virility, which equals access. If I refused to spend, I was not man enough. If I was not man enough, I did not get sex. I laid in the dark and looked at the ceiling. Most men would have felt hurt or rejected. I felt the cold clarity of a problem presenting itself. I was in a transactional relationship that was masquerading as a romantic one, and the terms of the contract were being unilaterally altered. I didn't break up with her immediately. You don't fire a vendor after one late shipment. You monitor the supply chain. You verify if it's a systemic issue or a one-time anomaly. For the next 4 weeks, I tracked the inputs and outputs. There was the dinner at the steakhouse. I ordered the ribeye. She ordered the Wagyu and a bottle of wine that cost more than the food. When the bill came, I reviewed it. I pointed out they had charged us for a side we didn't receive. She hissed at me to just pay it, looking around to see if the waiter heard. She said it was embarrassing over $10. Result: cold shoulder in the car. Accusation that I cared more about money than her comfort. Then came a car lease. Her lease was up. She wanted a Range Rover. She worked in marketing for a mid-tier fashion brand. Her commute was 3 miles. I told her the maintenance and insurance on that vehicle were illogical for city driving. I suggested a reliable sedan or a compact SUV or taking the train. She asked if I wanted her to drive a box and look poor. She withdrew intimacy for 3 days, claiming she felt unsexy because I didn't treat her like a prize. The smoking gun was the jewelry store. We walked past a window. She stopped, staring at a diamond pendant. For grand, easy. She whispered that if I bought her that, she'd make sure I didn't sleep for a week. It wasn't subtle anymore. It was a direct quote. The exchange rate was set. $4,000 equaled 1 week of high-effort sexual performance. I realized then that Chloe was operating on a Pavlovian model. She was the bell ringer. I was the dog. She believed that by withholding affection and questioning my status as a provider, she could condition me to spend money to relieve the anxiety of rejection. She thought she was training me. She failed to account for one variable. I don't operate on instinct. I operate on logic. If a contractor tries to double their rate halfway through a project without increasing the scope of work, you don't pay them. You reevaluate the necessity of the project. When the financial pressure didn't crack my wallet, Chloe introduced a new variable: competition. She assumed my provider instinct was linked to resource guarding. If I saw another male showing interest, or her showing interest in another male, she figured I would instinctively flood the market with resources, gifts, attention, commitment to secure my territory. We attended a fundraising gala for one of my firm's clients. It was a black tie event, necessary for networking, useless for everything else. Chloe spent 2 hours getting ready. The dress was low-cut, red, aggressive. It was designed to pull focus. When we arrived, I went to work. I spoke to the CFO of a logistics company about his supply chain bottlenecks. I was 20 minutes into the conversation when I noticed Chloe wasn't by my side. I scanned the room. She was at the bar. She was talking to a man named Dave. I knew Dave. He was a junior broker at a firm that specialized in high-risk, high-churn portfolios. He wore a watch that was too big for his wrist and a suit that was too tight in the shoulders. He was new money loud. Chloe was laughing. It was a performance. She threw her head back, exposing her neck. She touched his bicep. She leaned in close to whisper in his ear, her eyes darting across the room to see if I was watching. I was watching, but not with jealousy. I was observing the inefficiency of her tactic. She was devaluing her own stock. By openly soliciting attention from a lower-value competitor, Dave had zero equity in Lisa's lifestyle. She wasn't making herself more desirable to me. She was signaling volatility. She was showing me that her loyalty was liquid, available to whoever provided the most immediate dopamine hit. The CFO noticed my gaze and asked if everything was all right. I told him it was fine, just assessing the room. I finished the conversation and walked over to the bar. Chloe saw me coming. She lit up, expecting the confrontation. She expected me to put my arm around her waist, to puff out my chest, to glare at Dave. She wanted the scene. She wanted the validation that she was worth fighting for. I walked up to them. Dave grinned, looking like he'd won a prize. He mentioned Chloe was telling him about her trip to Cabo. I nodded and said it was efficient. I looked at Chloe and told her I'd made the necessary introductions with the client and was heading out because I had an early briefing. Her smile faltered. She asked if I was leaving. I said yes. She protested, saying the night was just starting and Dave was going to buy a round. I told her to enjoy it. I kept my voice flat, polite. I mentioned Uber was surging but should settle in an hour, and reminded her she had the account info. I wished Dave luck with the market and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't stomp. I didn't text her angrily from the car. I went home, reviewed some emails, and went to sleep. When she came home at 2 a.m., she was loud. She slammed the door. She marched into the bedroom and turned on the light. She shouted that I had left her there. I opened my eyes and told her I had announced my departure. She was engaged in conversation. I didn't see the utility in standing around while she flirted with a junior broker. She accused me of being jealous because he knew how to have fun and I was a robot. I told her I wasn't jealous, I was indifferent. If she wanted to spend time with Dave, that was her prerogative. But I wasn't going to subsidize it with my time. She asked if I didn't care that another man wanted her. I rolled over and told her about supply and demand. There's always demand for a depreciating asset if the price is low enough. I told her to turn off the light. That night was the pivot point. I instituted a full withdrawal of non-essential investment. In psychology, they call it the gray rock method. You become as uninteresting and unresponsive as a rock. In business, it's called limiting exposure. I stopped initiating conversation. I stopped asking about her day. I stopped suggesting dinner plans. I stopped reacting to her moods. I treated her with the polite, distant professionalism of a roommate you are waiting out a lease with. I bought my own groceries. I cooked for myself. If she was around, I asked if she wanted some chicken and rice purely out of politeness. I paid the bills I was contractually obligated to pay. I stopped paying for her Uber rides. I removed my card from her Amazon account. I stopped initiating intimacy entirely. The dynamic in the apartment shifted from a battlefield to a waiting room. Chloe didn't know how to handle it. She thrived on friction. She needed me to be angry or apologetic or desperate. She needed an emotional reaction to feed off of. I gave her nothing but silence and civility. She tried to escalate. She would leave her phone unlocked on the table, displaying texts from random men. I didn't look. She would dress in lingerie to walk to the kitchen for water. I would say, "Excuse me," and move past her to get to the coffee maker, my eyes never dropping below her face. It drove her insane. 3 weeks into the withdrawal, the market crashed. Chloe wanted a specific designer bag. It was the it bag of the season, a structured leather tote that cost as much as a used Honda. She decided to play her ace. I was in the study, working on a portfolio rebalancing for a tech startup. It was 10 p.m. Chloe walked in. She was wearing a silk robe, loosely tied. She smelled of expensive perfume, the one I had bought her 6 months ago. She closed the laptop. She climbed onto my lap. She ran her hands through my hair. It was a calculated move. She was betting that my biological drive would override my logical resolve. She was offering the product up front, hoping to secure payment later. She whispered that she missed us. She kissed my neck. She admitted she had been difficult, but wanted to feel pretty again, to feel taken care of. I sat still. I didn't push her away, but I didn't reciprocate. I let her perform. She murmured against my ear about the bag at the boutique. She said if she had it, she thought she'd feel so much better. She thought she'd have a lot more energy for intimacy. She moved her hand down my chest. I caught her wrist. I didn't squeeze. I just stopped the motion. I looked her in the eyes and said no. She froze. She pulled back slightly, confused. I told her I wasn't buying the bag. She claimed it wasn't about the bag, but about showing affection. I corrected her. I told her it was a transaction. She had just offered me sex in exchange for a $4,000 accessory. I was declining the offer. She jumped off my lap, accusing me of treating her like a prostitute. I told her she was attempting to negotiate a trade, and the terms were unfavorable. I was focusing on my portfolio and had no liquidity for high-risk, low-yield luxury goods. She screamed that she was my girlfriend and I was supposed to provide for her. I reminded her I provided shelter, security, and utilities. Anything beyond that was discretionary. Given her recent behavior, the flirting, the insults, the lack of partnership, I was exercising my discretion to withhold further investment. She threatened to go out the door and find 10 guys who would buy her that bag tonight. I looked at her. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I told her if that was true, and that was her priority, then logically she should go. If a competitor offers a better valuation, she should take the deal. She stared at me. Her mouth opened, then closed. She realized, in that moment, that she had zero leverage. She couldn't manipulate me with sex because I didn't need it from her. She couldn't manipulate me with jealousy because I didn't care if she left. She couldn't shame me because I didn't value her opinion of my masculinity. She was selling water to a man who had built his own well. The end came 5 days later. The behavior stopped. The flirting stopped. She became quiet. She started cleaning the apartment aggressively. She cooked dinner 2 nights in a row. She was trying to reestablish value. She realized the market had shifted and she was trying to avoid being delisted. But in business, once you realize a partner is capable of bad faith negotiation, you don't go back to normal. You exit. The trust is a sunk cost. You don't throw good money after bad. I prepared the paperwork on Friday. I spent Saturday morning at the gym. When I came back, she was watching TV. She looked up, hopeful, and suggested a movie. I sat down on the chair opposite the sofa. I told her we needed to discuss the logistics of the lease. Her face fell. I explained that I had spoken to the landlord. I was breaking the lease. I had paid the penalty fee. I had secured a new residence closer to my office. I was moving out on the 1st of the month. She looked like I had spoken in a foreign language. She asked what about her. I told her I had paid the rent on this unit for the next 60 days. I placed a folder on the coffee table. That gave her 2 months to either secure a roommate to cover my share or find a smaller apartment that fit her personal budget. I considered this a fair severance package. She stood up, trembling, and said she wasn't an employee. I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I felt incredibly light. The burden of her expectations was gone. I told her we had fundamentally different operating systems. She viewed relationships as an extraction of resources. I viewed them as a partnership. The merger failed. She started crying, panic setting in. She said she couldn't afford the place alone. I told her she had a job, and she had the market value she spoke so highly of. I was sure Dave or one of the others would be happy to assist. She begged, saying she would change, that she didn't need the bag. I told her it was too late for the pivot. The decision was made. I walked into the bedroom and began packing my suitcase. I had already moved the valuable items, my watches, my documents, my laptop, to a secure location earlier that day. She stood in the doorway, crying, begging, cycling through anger and bargaining. I tuned it out. It was just noise. It was the sound of a bad investment realizing it was being written off. I zipped the bag. I walked past her. I told her the movers would be there on Tuesday for the furniture. I'd leave the keys on the counter when I went. I walked out of the apartment building and into the cool autumn air. I checked my phone. My portfolio was up 1.5% for the day. My heart rate was 65 beats per minute. I hailed a cab. I didn't look back at the window. The books were balanced. I was free. Thank you for listening. That brings today's story to a close. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. See you next time.